Hi there and welcome to episode 4 of this casual walkthrough of creating a character with motion matching for Unity in Unity and using Bolt as well. So last episode we set up the sprints and the locomotion speed ramp. This episode we're going to take a look at probably less motion matching itself and more character set up in a way that's going to be scalable later on. Before we get into that though, let's quickly fix a few things. Now we set up our sprint, but I assumed a speed for the sprint and that speed was quite wrong. As you'll see, if I hold shift, you can see the green trajectory is way longer than the animation, which means we're not getting good matching. And the result, the negative result there is then I let go, there's about a half a second delay before we even slow down. So let's fix that. Now the first thing that is going to change that is going to be if we go to our sprint state and our set trajectory data, the max speed is probably more like 7. And we'll leave the move bias as is. Let's try this again. So, okay, it's still, it's closer, yeah, so the stop is much quicker now. I'd say it's more like 6.8 or something. I think I can change that at runtime. I can, yeah, 6.7 maybe even. Yeah, the stop is way more responsive, 6.7. Okay, we are stopping a lot quicker now because of that. So let's have a quick look. So maybe that's what you want. Maybe you want to stop quick, or maybe when sprinting you want to stop slower. So let's play with those numbers quickly. Go to calibration. I'll turn off these gizmos because they're annoying me. Let's make the trajectory weight seems fine. Let's leave the calibration. We'll go to the input profile for sprint. Might want to make this a little bit slower now, 0.6. That might make that deceleration a bit more weighty. My problem wasn't that it was weighty. My problem was that the delay between letting go of the keys and then it actually stopping was very big. You know what? That might still be a bit slow. Let's just put that at 1, see what happens. So now it's responding as quick as the normal run. Yeah, you know what? I think I'll just leave it at that. It seems fine to me. So now that we've fixed up those few things, let's change the model of our character. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of sick of Robot Kyle. He has a really funky character rig setup, and I'm tired of using him. So let's use something else. Now I've got one of Cinti's characters from the Cowboys, from the Wild West sort of set. And I know a lot of you guys are using Cinti's model, so hey, why not? Let's use this. So I'm going to use this one instead of the character. Now it's pretty simple to replace it. So we've got this model here. Now the cool thing is we don't have to replace any of this. Let's just drag our character Cowboy underneath character there, and we have it there. And what I'm going to do is, it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to just copy and paste all of the components. So to do that, we just click here, we say copy components, and we go to here and we say paste component as new. And why didn't that work? Oh, well, that's the animator, so we have to paste over the other animator. But I don't think it's any different anyway. So apply root motion, we'll uncheck that. It's not going to matter anyway. Okay, cool. Right, so we'll just do that with all the other ones really quick. Okay, so I've copied all of those over. Now I'm just going to delete our Robot Kyle. I don't need him anymore. We just need to set up a couple of references. So just make sure things are right. So we've got the character controller wrapper on the root motion applicator. That is pointing to there, so that's fine. See our MXM animator. We've got our animated data. We've got our calibration. That's great. We've got our character. Yep, all of these seem fine to me. And finally, let's look at our trajectory generator, our main camera, and so it's all fine. We actually don't need to fix up anything. And that was helped a lot by the fact that our character was separated, so the model was separated from our character, so we didn't have to replace all those as well. Okay, so we've successfully set all that up again. Let's do one thing. We need to go to our MXM config module, and we want to replace Robot Carl here. We don't want to use him anymore. Let's find our model here. So Polygon Western, and where are my characters? So my cowboy. I'll drag him in there, and we will reprocess the data because we want to reprocess as much as is possible with the model that we want to use or with a similar set of models. At least all the Cinti models are kind of very similar in proportions, but not so much with Robot Carl. So we'll pre-process that, and I'll override my previous one. Now, if I hit play, everything should work fine. Now, keep in mind, it would have worked fine with the Robot Carl model as well, without doing that last step. It would have worked fine with that data, but it's just better having it like this. And I think that looks pretty damn good. I find that changing the model often can make a big difference with how the animation looks. And I find particularly Robot Carl isn't very flattering to the animation. So I think this looks pretty good. Even though it's quite a low poly model. So yeah, that looks really awesome. Happy with that. Now let's go and set up this character for more. So we're going to go on to combat. And to do that, we need to be able to equip a weapon. So I'm going to start with a revolver in one hand, and we'll go from there. Now to do that, we're going to need to set up character slots, because first we have to equip that revolver from the hip to the hand. And we're going to do that using an animation event, but first we need to set up our weapon prefab itself. So I'm going to go find a weapon from this Polygon Western, and let's go to prefabs, weapons. I'm going to take revolver, I think that one, yeah, revolver 2. Now I'm just going to chuck this at the center, and we'll hide our character for now. So there we have our weapon. I'm going to remove these mesh colliders. I actually don't want it to have any mesh colliders. And we're going to create a new empty object and make sure that's at 0, 0. And I'm going to call this revolver model. Now this is going to have a script on it later, but for now we're just going to leave it as is. And I'm going to make the mesh. So this has a mesh on its base level. I don't like to have that. I like to put it underneath another game object, an empty game object, kind of like I did with the character as well, but now I'm doing it with the weapon. What this allows me to do is it effectively allows me to change the origin point of the gun so that it's where I want it to be, not where the artist happened to put it. So in this case, you can see that's the origin of the gun here, because we've set these both to 0, 0. But I want it to be sort of in the middle of the handle. So I'm going to move it up. So now I've selected the model, not the base. The base stays at 0, 0. And I'm selecting the model, and I'm going to drag it to about there. That looks pretty good to me. Now, if I set up every single gun in this way, when I equip it to the hand, it's going to be in the right place. So every gun I set up, the origin is going to be sort of in the middle of the handle, where the palm of the hand should effectively be. So yeah, let's actually add in another empty game object. And I'm just going to call this muzzle, because eventually we're going to need this. So I'm going to call this muzzle. I'll call it gun muzzle, or maybe I'll just call it shoot point. Shoot point, and I'm going to position that at the end so that when we eventually get to, shooting with our weapon, we've got a transform where we can spawn our effects from and and all that stuff. So we've got that there. We'll just leave that as blank for now. But you can see why it's important to set up a separate prefab that isn't just the mesh itself. I'm going to drag this model in and create a prefab. Where are my prefabs? I've already got a folder for weapon. I'll drag that model in there. So anytime we play with it, it's there. We can now delete this, and it's ready to go for use later. So let's go back to our character, and there's a few things we're going to add. Now we'll go to the actual model itself, I'm actually going to rename this as cowboy model, just so that we have the same terminology. And I'm going to delete this one just so that I have the right naming and put it back there. So character model. Actually, wait, I said cowboy model. Cowboy model. There we go. And I'm going to add a component called character model, ironically. Now, this is a script that I've created to help me set up slots on characters. You can make your own. I'm going to provide all the scripts that I'm using here with a link in the description. Have a look at them. I'll go through them very briefly, but I don't want to go and code them from scratch because I think that would be a waste of time. Where we're trying to get a character set up with MXM, I don't want to be teaching you basic coding stuff that you can find out online. Here's a look at all the scripts there are. There's character model, inventory, footstep system, and an object pooler. Now, all of these things you can find out how to do online, or you can look at these scripts and see how I do them. They are a way of doing it. They're pretty robust. They can be a lot more feature filled, but you'll get the idea from doing this tutorial. Anyway, we have a footstep profile, which we'll ignore for now. And we have attachment points. Now, before we add attachment points, let's open this eChar attachments. This is an enumeration, and these are the attachments that I've decided in my hypothetical game that I want. None, hand equip left, hand equip right, etc., etc. We've also got foot effects left and foot effects right, which is where we're going to spawn our particle effects and stuff for our footsteps. So once you've gone and set that up as you like, we'll go back to our model, and I think there was 7 of those slots, and we're going to set up each attachment ID. So we're going to associate a transform on the model skeleton to these IDs, which are going to be our slots that we can attach weapons to. So I'm just going to set all of these up really quick. And I'm actually going to override this to our prefab and open the prefab. And we're going to work now on the prefab instead of, in the scene, because that makes a little bit more sense. So hand equip L. Let's just do that one first. So let's find the hand. Now we don't want it to be the hand, right? Because we have, that's actually the hand R. We don't want it to be the actual hand bone itself, because then we have no control over an offset. Remember, our gun origin is now in the middle of the handle. But if we put that where the hand is, it's going to cover over into our hand, and we don't want that. We need an offset. We want an offset from the gun, and we also want an offset from the hand, where the slot is going to go. So let's go to our hand L, and we'll create an empty game object. I'm going to call this hand equip L. Now it's just easy to keep it the same name as our IDs that we had. I'll just go back to the top of our character here. And actually, where is it? Character model. There we go. And I'll lock that so we don't lose this here. I'll go and drag our hand equip L over to here. So now that is our slot. If we have a look at it, we can see it's there. And now what we can do is we can reposition it so that it's kind of in the middle of the hand where we want it to be. I'm just going to eyeball it for now. Now, how do we get it exactly in the right place? Well, let's drag our revolver model in, and I'm going to drag it underneath that hand equip L, and then I'm on the revolver model. I'll have to unlock this now. I'm going to make sure I've got my transform reset. Now, it's not really in the right orientation at all. Now, instead of rotating my revolver model, we're going to assume that when we attach something to a slot, it attaches it and resets its transform completely. So we need the slot to be set up properly in the first place. So we'll go to our slot, our hand equip L, and we're going to rotate that now. So that's going to be -90. We want this to be, wait, I think that's the wrong way. Yep, that's the wrong way. We want that to be -90. So that's about good for the rotation. Let's shift it around until we get about the right position in the hand. I think that's actually relatively decent. We might adjust it more later on, maybe a little bit, could even rotate it a little bit this way. It really just depends. Probably a little bit more because our finger's theoretically going to go through there. All right, cool. So we've moved the, oh shoot, I think I accidentally moved the model a bit. I accidentally moved the model there. Don't move the model, move the slot. So let's do that again. So we're essentially just previewing our slot here, what the gun would look like in this slot. Might even make it go up a little bit. Okay, cool. That's close enough for now. So now that I've moved the model again because I'm silly. It was moving the slot. See, even I'm making this mistake. The problem is when you click on the actual mesh, it selects the model. So make sure you select it in the hierarchy. All right, so you can play with that till your heart's desire. But now the slot is filled, we're fine. Now the only other one we're gonna need is a thigh. And in fact, I wanted this gun to be equipped in the right. Actually, no. Let's make it a left-handed character. Why not? Let's make another one. So the thigh. Where is the thigh? It is the left thigh, upper leg, and we'll create an empty. So we're gonna go Stow thigh L. And now I'm going to take the revolver, put it over thigh slot L, and I'm going to reset the revolver, the model's transform. So that's where it is in the thigh, and clearly that's not the right place. Clearly not. Let's move that quickly. All right. So we can move it over here, we'll rotate it. Not that one. Rotate it. Okay, so that's a bit roughly the right orientation. Rotate it like that. Shift it up. Move it over to the side. I might even rotate it outwards a little bit. So there we go. For all his handguns, now that is now the slot. Now was I? Yep, I was moving the right thing. So the idea is that when I chuck the revolver onto something else and reset its transform, which is going to happen in the code, it just pops into the right place. So yeah, I'll chuck it now onto that Stow left thigh, reset the transform, pop, it's in the right place. So this is just we're just previewing what it'll look like. So we can actually delete that revolver now. We know the Stow thigh left and the hand left are in the right place. And I'm going to grab that Stow thigh left and chuck it in there. And those slots are now set up. Now I'm going to quickly add in all these other slots, but I'm going to fast forward because we don't need to see all of it. Okay, there we have it. I've made a whole bunch of slots for the foot effects, everything, Stow back, and they are all set up in this character model. Let's have a quick look at the script, not too long, just to see exactly what it does. It's not very complicated at all. No update function or anything. Anyway, we have this class just to define the attachment points, the attachment and the transform. We have a list of those attachment points, and that's exactly what we've just filled out, a list of the attachment ID and the transform. At runtime, when we awake, we convert this list into a dictionary so we can look up the attachments much quicker. You can't serialize a dictionary in Unity, so you have to create a list and then convert it to a dictionary on awake. We've got some functions that I've commented out for now. They're related to footsteps, which we'll tackle later. And the only other function is get attachment. So we can now ask our character model, not actually knowing exactly what our character model is, hey, give me this attachment. And if we have different character models, it's going to give you the appropriate attachment in the appropriate correct place. So it's basically going to return a transform of that attachment. So when we say, hey, I want to equip my gun to the right hand, we just say, hey, get me the right hand attachment. Now you've got the transform of that right hand attachment. You just parent the gun to the hand and reset its that weapon model's transform, and it should be in the hand. So that's one part of the equation there. We've got the model set up, and we've got it set up as a prefab. So this will essentially work with any character, this model now. So we can go back, and what we need to add to our character now is what I'm going to call a character inventory. Now, don't think of this as an inventory like an RPG inventory where you have items and stuff. This is like a physical inventory. There are an inventory of models that go on the character, like a gun or something that you can equip and stow away. It's not necessarily the items that you've collected in the game. So I'm just going to add one feature, and I'm going to say primary main hand, and I'm going to call, let's make this the main hand for now. We can change that later. Now, keep in mind, that's very specific to my game. Maybe you don't have a concept of primary and secondary main hand and offhand weapons. Maybe you can just equip anything in any slot, in which case you might not even have this here. You might find a different way. This is just my way of saying that, like, when I want to use my logic and I want to equip a weapon, I want to say, hey, equip my primary main hand, and it knows that it goes to this particular item. Now we need a prefab here, and it's going to instantiate this on awake. So I'll drag in my revolver model, and that's the prefab that it's going to create. It's going to create this item base. This shouldn't actually be serialized, so we just leave it. So it's going to instantiate that prefab at runtime, and then it's going to equip it to, it's going to stow it. But we need to tell it what slot does it equip in. It equips in the hand left in this case, and it stows in the thigh right. This last option, hide on stow, is if, say, you have this massive bazooka and you want to put it in your back pocket, your magical back game pocket, where it just disappears. It just fits into your back pocket, a bazooka. It's amazing, I know. You can just check this, and when it unequips, it just disappears. And then when it equips, it reappears, just like it does in many games. So there we go. That is that. That's pretty much set up. I'll show you quickly this script. Okie dokie. So basically, I have the identification of the weapons that I can equip. My primary main hand, offhand, secondary, and secondary offhand. Obviously, I've set up this limitation in my game where you can only have like 4 slots to be equipped. Some might take out 2 slots or whatever. You might not have this, and in which case you might want to just pass in an ID of the gun that you want to use or something like that. This is the class that had all that information that we were seeing in this list, all of these values here. We have a list of those and a reference to our character model, so we can get the slots, remember. And again, I'm converting this list into a dictionary and awake, and I'm also instantiating them. I think I'm actually not doing that, but I will do that very soon. The scripts that you'll find available, linked in the description, will actually instantiate that prefab when it starts. And then we've got 2 functions, equip and stow. That's it. We just say, hey, I want you to equip my primary ID. Because we've told it where its equip slot is and its stow slot is, we don't need to tell it which slot to put it in. Maybe you have a system of your own where you can tell it specifically at runtime, hey, put it in this slot. In my particular case, I'm not going to do that. Certain guns go in certain slots, end of story, in this particular game. So basically, when we equip it, we can get that item based on the ID that we passed. And then we basically get the attachment from the character model, and we parent the model, our weapon, to that slot. And we reset its transform, and we set it to active so it's visible, and done. That's it. That's putting it in the slot. Really, really cool and simple. Let me just quickly add the instantiation for this, and then we'll test this out. Okay, so I've created a start function for this, just so that my instantiating of the items always comes after my awake and also after my character model is set up, because if I'm trying to get slots, because you see what happens here is I'm instantiating the item, I'm setting it, and then I'm stowing it straight away. So all my items are going to get stowed straight away. If I try to stow something, and that's going to call this function, and it's going to try and get the attachment from the character model, if the character model isn't set up, it's going to fail. That's why I've put it in start instead of awake. Unity has a really arbitrary way of figuring out the order of your mono behavior scripting updates, so you can set it to happen the way you want, but by putting this in start, I guarantee that it comes after all awake functions, and the character model is all done in awake, so that is cool. So yeah, that is that function. I've added this update function. This is temporary. I'm going to delete it. It's just that I can test this quickly when we run around. If I press T, it's going to equip that gun. If I press Y, it's going to stow. So if this all worked correctly, when I press play, that gun is actually going to be spawned. Now this is the cool thing. We can load this in from our save game. We don't have to have it already attached on the model at all. And this is a step towards having this character that we can piece together at on load rather than just in the editor. So yeah, it's going to instantiate that model. It's going to be stowed on our hip, and then we should be able to switch it between our hip and our hand, obviously without any animations at this point. But yeah, so you can see there is the gun on his hip. If I press T, it goes into his hand, and if I press Y, it goes back onto his hip. And so that is working pretty well. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. Again, there's a lot of boilerplate, but hey, this is game development. There's going to always be a lot of boilerplate. If I'm going to do a character tutorial series like this, I can't only show motion matching. There's other stuff that needs to be done in conjunction with MXM and Bolt and all that. So yeah, this is going to be pretty good. What we're going to end up doing is having an event and an animation that is going to call a function in our player logic that is going to then decide whether we, equip or stow at what point. When the hand reaches the hip, it's going to equip or stow that item. So yeah, that's pretty much that. The gun, I could probably play around with adjusting the gun's orientation, that slot's orientation. It's pointing a bit funny, but yeah, I'll probably do that off scene. So yeah, in the next episode, we're also going to do that transition into combat. Going to do it in two ways. So if we're standing idle, it's going to be like a full body transition. Draw the gun and go into a combat stance. If he's running already, it's going to be just an upper body. So we're going to do that and set that up nicely. That's already set up in that night demo. It already works that way, but we're going to do that here as well. So thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next video.